Man, the tone on that metronome is so hot.
It's different.
It's just Google. Just Google metronome. It's there for you.
Buddy, it is dripping wet.
That's going to be my playlist for tomorrow on stream.
People will love it. You've heard of an ASMR stream before. This is a metronome.
Can I ask you guys for some help?
Of course.
Perhaps.
I need to file a reimbursement request with Magic Online, and I was hoping maybe you could proofread my explanation email if I just read it out to you.
I'm all ears.
We're worried about this, but okay.
Yeah, just let me know if it's clear.
Okay.
If I state my case, to whom it may concern.
Uh-huh.
What happened today during my latest attempt to complete a modern league on Magic Online was not a bug. It was not a technical hiccup. It was a full-scale collapse of your digital infrastructure that robbed me of my time, resources, and frankly, a little bit of my dignity. Your system's performance was so abysmal, so insultingly unstable, that calling it lag would be an act of generous understatement. It was a complete operational failure. I was stuck mid-match trying to resolve a routine fetch land, locked in a frozen client, and left helpless as the round timer bled out like a stuck pig. It was a perfect league, a beautiful league. I was not outplayed. I was defeated by your inability to provide a functioning platform for the online trading card game I paid to play. If Richard Garfield was dead, he would be rolling in his grave. But
What?
But since he is alive and pretty busy, which I know because I interviewed him once, I'm quite sure he doesn't actually care, so I'm complaining to you instead. Let me be perfectly clear. I did not pay to stress test your aging, barely competent software. I paid to enter a competitive modern event. I was denied that experience because your system failed at the most fundamental level. I'm not merely requesting a reimbursement, I am demanding one. Refund my entry fee for the modern league in question immediately, or escalate this to someone who can. I have logs, I have timestamps, and I have a hugely successful Magic the Gathering podcast, which I will not hesitate to leverage in order to smear you into the ground.
Too late.
I appreciate your time and consideration and hope to hear from you soon. Smell you later, Stanislav.
Smell you later, Karen.
Kyle. Corey. What do you
Wow.
think? Is it clear that it's the lag?
It's clear that you're not happy
Okay.
It's
with your life.
It's definitely clear. It's clear about something. Yeah, I don't really know if it's about MTGO lag, but I mean, that is maybe, a topic for a different episode.
Okay, in that case, let me just... Okay, sent.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys.
You know what? I don't think the character count on the reimbursement form actually can hold that much language.
Undo send.
Do you think that getting angry letters like that is what is actually crashing the Magic Online infrastructure? Which, by the way, has been working fine for like weeks. And then today it completely fell apart. Yeah.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I have my exposure to MTGO has been extremely limited over the past couple of weeks. So
Because you're drafting?
I did play a challenge this weekend though, and maybe we'll talk about that.
I would love to talk about that.
All right, should we talk about it on episode 317 of the Dive Down?
Sure.
Hello and welcome to episode 317 of the Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, strategies, and grievances for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from beautiful Commonwealth, Massachusetts, it's Devin O'Donnell, aka Doomwick.
That's me.
What up, dog?
What up? I'm here.
Love to see it.
I don't know what else to say. I mean, you killed it with the open. I can't really top that.
I'm just going to pretend that we don't know you after that open when the Pinkertons show up to extract their revenge.
Also with us, it's the Godfather.
Yep. Trying to stay silent.
The cowardly Dave Harbarger. I thought you were on my team.
We are legally obligated to say that is not in of the view of the Dive Down podcast.
It's not 100% the view of all of the co-hosts.
Well,
I will say.
You say and then I say.
I will say.
You will say. You say it first.
I understand that you're upset. But as I said, Magic Online has been pretty good the last little stretch. And I'm sorry that happened today on Monday, that a lot of people had lag problems. Didn't see it coming.
And I will say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry in advance if you are punished because I used the Dive Down email account to send that letter.
Perfect. You're never gonna get the reimbursement when you do that.
Wait, why did I just get a Gmail notification from Watsy@Watsy.com? What is going on here?
It's not about the reimbursement, David. It's about sending a message. I'm like Joker sitting on a big pile of cash, burning it down. You want to know how I got these scars? It was the lag. On this week's show, we're actually not talking about lag. It's just a funny haha bit I was doing. Watsy, don't cancel me. Instead,
Checks in the mail, bro.
Instead, we got our hands on some Dragonstorm cards that we played in Constructed. We're storming off and cutting steel. We're announcing victory with an inspiring song. It's a good day to be a Magic player. But first, let's housekeep. We got a new review that I need to bring to Devin's attention because someone named Tom wrote on our Spotify that you, Devin, owe them a grilled cheese sandwich.
Someone named Tom, huh?
And I'd really like that you take your sandwich business outside of Dive Down operations.
But you get to send a customer complaint.
I'm a founder, co-founder.
I see.
I came up with the name.
Yeah.
I have a vague recollection of who that is, but I'll have to message Tom.
Man, you need to check those IOUs, bro. There's a sandwich with Tom's name on it.
I don't exactly
have
I don't exactly have a receipt, but I can double check.
I do have a question here.
Okay.
So if we're talking about people who make comments on Spotify, I do have a listener comment that came in with a question that I was struggling to answer. So I did not publish it yet because I would love to ask you guys this question. You ready? So this is from Jerry Brazda 4 days ago. They sent us a note, very nice note. They said, do you guys have an opinion on which deck to buy and start with in the current modern meta when I do not play Modern for very long, but just uncompetitively with friends? There's a lot wrapped up in this question, and so I don't want to get super deep into qualifying things, but I just thought, where would you start in Modern if you were playing with friends?
You just want to sit down, have a good time. Honestly,
Devin, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I was going to say Murktide.
Oh, not what I was thinking.
Okay. I think that's a good answer because it can be competitive or it can be dialed down.
It's like a good mix of both,
I think it's a mix of both. Yeah. I hesitate to say something that I would start with because of not level of complexity, but simplicity of understanding the plan. Like I wouldn't say energy to someone like this because it's too competitive, I think, for a group of friends playing Modern, right?
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your answer, Stan?
Have you ever heard of Boros Burn?
I think Burn is good because it's not costly and
It still wins games.
it still wins games.
Like it's not embarrassing to play Burn.
No. Here's my answer. And you guys can laugh or whatever, but group of friends together playing Modern. Have you ever heard the Gospel of Merfolk, my friends?
It's a good one.
If you are someone playing a casual format with your friends, I feel like that is the only time you will get to play a tribal deck in Modern, really. A kindred deck in Modern, let's say.
Thank you.
And I would suggest taking a look at Merfolk. What I would not do, friend, Jerry Brazda, our new friend, is spend a lot of time thinking about combo decks in Modern.
Agreed.
I wouldn't play Storm with your friend group. I wouldn't play Titan with your friend group. I wouldn't do any of that kind of stuff. Belcher. Listen, it's a tricky thing. We're not going to go a ton deeper on this, but the reason that this question was difficult for me to come across with is that Modern kind of is intrinsically a competitive format.
Oh, it is.
I think.
Yeah.
And in particular, a lot of the formats are Standard, maybe less so, Pioneer, maybe less so. Modern has a lot of kind of competitive edginess to it. And people play decks that they don't always love the game experience of because they are try hard winning, not just because they're here to have fun. And that's fine. That's what Modern is. And your experience that you're trying to have with Modern is great too, but that's why I wouldn't look at the top tier of the meta all the time.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I want to add a qualifier to that. Mm-hmm. And I'll even throw out one more deck, which I think also satisfies the question. Domain Zoo.
That was on my list as well, for what it's worth.
I think Zoo is like a nice way to just play classic creature-based Magic while still playing a deck that's good and Modern playable, that maybe your friends won't hate you for playing the way perhaps they would if you were trying to Storm off or Belcher or Titan them.
Correct. Last one I would throw out is Black-White Orzhov midrange. I think I would consider as well, because if you like just doing funny blinky stuff, lots of triggers, I think that could scratch an itch as well.
I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Rhinos. I know, Stan, I'm looking at you. I mean, deck is fun. It's not really that good, but it's still really fun.
I like what you said, Dave, about Modern being an intrinsically competitive format. And it made me think of this maxim that I literally just invented. Just because a pile of cards is Modern legal doesn't necessarily mean it's a Modern deck if it's just like a casual kitchen table brew. Yeah. And I sometimes compare Modern to Street Fighter. If Street Fighter had a create a character mode where you can like create a cheeky character and play them against Chun-Li and Ryu, but the tier metagame of a fighting game of Street Fighter is still going to be better than your little cheeky create a character. And I find that Modern is the same way, where you come to play Modern decks. And it's not just about playing cards that are legal in the format, unless you are a very accomplished deck builder and brewer who can find something competitive to do. But that's not the level you're at if you're just trying to play casually with your friends anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So that was an interesting, fun question.
I really love it. Thanks for starting the show with that. That was much more positive than the way I tried to start the show.
Anything was more positive than the way you tried to start the show, buddy. But
you know, if you want to encourage us to give more insightful recommendations to you, our listeners, or to embolden me to say increasingly incendiary things on mic to try to make my co-host laugh, you can support The Dive Down at patreon.com/thedivedown. We have a store at thedivedown.com/store. We have some great sponsors over at Heavy Play. The Dive Down 2025 gets you 10% off your first order at heavyplay.com, as well as the Magic Online rental service Mana Traders. That still works great. Promo code The Dive Down, all one word, gets you 25% cash back after 3 months of service at Heavy Play. All right, enough fun and games. Can we be serious for a second?
Of course.
Did y'all play any new cards from Dragonstorm Tarkir?
Certainly did.
Nice. All right, good up.
Who wants to wants to start where? Stan, I think let's start with what you've been up to. What's been in your pocket?
Starting?
Okay.
Our new podcast, What's in Your Deck Box?
Yeah, so that's a great one.
What's in your deck box?
Write that down.
Yeah, we could do something with that. TM.
All right, here's what I've got for y'all. I figured out why they call it the voice of victory. Because you win when you cast it.
Yeah.
You like that? How about them apples?
Can we, just for today, read these cards to people since we are very new to the format?
It's pretty good.
Why not? It's only week 2. I was listening to some limited podcasts earlier, and they reminded themselves that it's only week 2 and they should read the card. So let's read the card.
Probably a good idea.
The card that Stan wanted to start with is Voice of Victory. It costs a generic and a white for a 1/3 creature human bard. It has mobilize 2, and it says your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. And I assume the deck we're talking about here, at least to begin, is Boros Energy in Modern.
Yeah, I copied and pasted a list that Young Dingo posted on Blue Sky. And I loved it.
How much did you love it?
I'm going to be hyperbolic because that is my nature.
Sure.
And feel free to bring me down to earth. Dev, you played this deck a little bit as well. I'd love to hear if you agree or disagree. But here's how hyperbolic I'm going to be. I feel so strongly that this card belongs in the deck that if a month from now we reach a point where Boros Energy isn't playing 3 or 4 of these, I will have a lot to learn about the way this deck is like supposed to function in today's metagame, that there's anything better to do than play Voice of Victory. I thought this card was incredible with the majority of the angles and lines that this deck just kind of wants to do. And I actually think it's a incredible replacement for Amped Raptor, because even though it's not cheating out turn 2 the One Rings, it is a new great source of card advantage that I think more Boros players will need to catch up on, because I'm still seeing a ton of lists that are not playing this card, and it makes no sense to me to cut it from the list after what I've seen it accomplish in my hands.
I'm really glad you brought up Amped Raptor, because it feels like ever since the banning of that card, there has been sort of a gap in the deck building process where everybody was playing more 3-drops and you're trying to get like a couple 4s in there. Maybe you just play a couple extra 1s, but having an additional like really good solid 2-drop on the curve, it just makes your hands, and it just makes everything flow a lot better. And I don't know, about, we'll get into how you thought about the card. Personally, I think the card might be better than Amped Raptor. It's a bold statement, but
I think it's an interesting debate. I mean, the ceiling on Amped Raptor is so much higher because Amped Raptor will sometimes come down with haste and bring with it like the most broken cards in modern history.
Or just a 3-drop, which is saying a lot.
Yes.
It's on its own, yeah.
Yes. But the way I see this as being a source of card advantage, just because I introduced the notion, I feel like I need to back it up, is in the same way that young Pyromancer's card advantage in Izzet control decks. You produce so much material that eventually applies enough pressure on your opponents that they need to figure out a way to either deal with that material or the card itself. And even though Mobilize forces you to sack the tokens at the end of the turn, when you pair it with something like Ocelot Pride or even Goblin Bombardment, that sacrifice clause doesn't actually matter because you're still using that extra material for a ton of value. In the case of Goblin Bombardment, possibly using it as removal spells or burn spells. In the case of Ocelot Pride, making those tokens permanent.
Yeah. So that you can then use them as burn spells.
Yes. What is so good about this card is how well it plays with just about the majority of the other cards in this deck. Obviously, all the triggers you get off of Guide of Souls when you mobilize too. That's insane. Yeah. Devin, you mentioned this in a previous episode that the way you can time the Guide of Soul attack trigger as well as the mobilize trigger can sometimes allow you to pay 3 energy and give something +2/+2 in flying in the same step that you are getting these tokens as well.
Yeah, usually it's the Voice of Victory that you're giving the flying to, so someone doesn't block it and kill it. So then you're facing down 2 tokens, which you may or may not have answers for, and then also a 3/5 flyer.
I mentioned Goblin Bombardment. Now you have extra material to use to burn people, places, or things. Thraben Charm, also not something to ignore because it has the removal spell ability, and this is 2 extra bodies to make your Thraben Charm do up to 4 additional damage, which I think is really important for like big Murktides, if nothing else.
Yeah, that came up for me when I was playing against White Black, and I only had a Voice of Victory in play, and they had the Overlord, and I was able to just with Voice of Victory attack, make the tokens, and then charm, deal damage to their Overlord, which I guess I could have just blown up an enchantment anyways, but I don't know, it was cool. Like obviously, if they had other non-enchantment creatures, but
There's the Ocelot Pride move where if you've gained life off of Ocelot itself or a Guide of Souls or a Flage, then you can arrange the triggers at the end of turn so that you can make permanent copies. I guess you need City's Blessing for this, but
you need the City's Blessing. Yeah.
Let's put a pin in City's Blessings for just a second. You need City's Blessings for this, but then you get to keep those tokens forever. With regard to City's Blessing, I had a game where I had 2 voices and an Ocelot Pride, and I think I got City's Blessing on turn 4. It was the fastest City's Blessing I'd ever accomplished just because of between the lands, the creatures, and the tokens I was making, I was able to just like go nuts. And I think in some cases, this is now the fastest the deck has been when you have an aggressive Voice of Victory start as it's been since Amped Raptor got banned.
Yeah. I can say, being on the receiving end of this a couple of times, 2 different leagues, I believe I played against Boros Energy with Voice of Victory. It hurts. It's fast. It seems pretty tough to keep up with. And that's not even to mention the synergy that it has with Ajani, which you were going to say too.
That's the next one on my list. So I want to note the attacking warrior creature tokens are red. You know who cares about red stuff? Flipped Ajani.
Yeah.
So
And the tokens don't die until end of turn, so they stay in second main phase to give you.
yeah,
Exactly.
So even though Voice of Victory itself is a white card, it's creating another red permanent that you can use towards a Johnny Zero ability to make a body and then deal a burn spell worth of however many creatures you have at whatever target you want to direct that burn damage. Card's good. Here's the other thing. 3 toughness is nothing to sneeze at. I was playing against Dimir, not a deck with famously high power creatures in the early game, playing against like an Orcish Bowmaster and a Psychic Frog they had 0 or 1 card in hand. Basically, they couldn't make the Psychic Frog big enough. They just couldn't block the thing. Or even if they did, they would either trade or do nothing. But then the tokens were dealing damage anyway. So in a format where there's so few lightning bolts, especially, I feel like that 3 toughness is actually surprisingly powerful and makes it like a little harder to kill if you don't have Fatal Push or a traditional removal spell like that.
Blocks Ragavan too.
Blocks Ragavan beautifully.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about this that we haven't talked about yet, which I think is worth talking about, is that one thing that I totally whiffed on is just forgetting the last line of text on this card, which is you can't cast spells on your opponent's turn.
Yes.
With this.
That one comes up.
Yeah. I didn't expect it to come up, but I'm sure people will get better at this. I'm sure I might get better at this, just remembering that this restriction applies. But I would be like, okay, I'm going to pass, and then during their upkeep, I'm going to kill the Voice of Victory or whatever. And like, no, you can't do that. You can't do a lot of stuff. You can't do anything.
Nice try, Hotshot.
One thing that you also can't do is Solitude Ephemerate on your opponent's turn. And that came up for me when I was playing against Black-White. And it like makes them play in this sort of weird way where they have to Solitude on their turn, and then you don't get blown out in combat by it. So yeah, it like if you resolve it against Blue-White control, I don't know how they ever beat it. Because their deck is all chance and counter spells.
This card is truly absurd, honestly.
It's good.
It's very good. Did it have to be so good? It's good.
Yeah, it had to be good. It's a con set. Cards have to be good in con sets.
Yeah, true. Okay.
Devin, did you say you played a modern challenge with Boros in this card?
I did.
It sounds like you also liked it. Do you feel like I'm being too hyperbolic?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't really have the best matchup spread for Voice of Victory. In classic Boros fashion, I beat the 2 Fair decks that I played against, which were Murktide and Black-White, and I got demolished by 3 combo decks.
What were the combo
which
decks?
is the life of Boros. Yawgmoth, Amulet, and Storm.
I beat a Storm deck 2-0 with Voice of Victory in that match where I had like my crazy turn 4 City's Blessing. And I think that kind of brings me to that point I was saying how I feel like an explosive voice start is comparable to some of your fastest Amped Raptor starts from back in the day, where it gives you a new hedge against certain combo strategies. I can see Yawgmoth still being a problem just because they play so many creatures, but against something like Storm or even Belcher, where you're not really worried about opposing blockers, having this new angle to go really fast can be like a way to sometimes cheese out game 1 that I think in the past used to be a lot harder.
Yeah, I could see if you have it with, bombardment plus, like you said, a fast Ocelot, right? It definitely increases the speed of your draws. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times that matchup post board just comes down to like, do you have the right sideboard cards? And I don't think I had Blood Moons in my sideboard. I think I decided to not play them. So then without Blood Moon, the Amulet matchup is nearly impossible. And Yawgmoth has always been kind of a struggle too.
Card's good. I want to buy them. I want to buy the weird full art black logo versions, but
they're cool.
Card Kingdom sold out. I was saying last week how I thought that they looked bad, and then you're like, they look good in person. and I opened up some collector boosters and I got one. And it wasn't until I had it in my, or I didn't get a voice, but I saw some of these cards.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I had it in my hand that I realized that like the black image is the clan symbol. And it looks really nice on the Sultai ones because of the fang.
I never noticed that.
It's not just arbitrary negative space.
Right.
It means something.
They're doing something with the space. Forrest made it mean something in the space. Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe Sarah.
Also,
depending.
For Voice of Victory, you got to get the alt art because I don't know if you looked at the alt art version, but it's just like that. Is that a banjo or a guitar? I can't tell. I think it's a banjo.
Maybe it's a lute.
I think it might be a dobro or another traditional instrument from the area of the world that is the source for this.
Oh yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it like a Mongolian guitar?
Yeah, it's something along those lines, but I forget what they're called. But
beautiful.
Yeah.
This looks like something that Sting would play.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely before spending hours.
As he was getting dressed to play Baron, or not Baron, but a Harkonnen in David Lynch's Dune.
Mm-hmm. He'd be like tuning it up. Yeah. Like, I do want to ask you about another card before we get out of here, because you were playing 2 new cards in this deck that I noticed.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about Clarion Conqueror for a moment? So Clarion Conqueror, I think we mentioned it last week, or I had on the list to mention last week. It is a 2 generic and a white for a 3/3 dragon with flying, and says activated abilities of artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers can't be activated. Number one, this is one of the cheapest dragons I've ever seen, a 3 mana dragon that actually has good stats, but that's for another thing. Did you try this card? Did it come in? Did you have to use it? Was it good?
I didn't play this card.
You didn't in the list that, okay, you didn't play it.
No, I played a different card.
What did you play instead?
I played 4 copies of Flamehold Grappler.
Oh, okay.
Oh, did you do the Jeskai version?
I did the Jeskai version.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So he was saving that
you
for later.
Posted a list that you didn't actually play in the show notes, Stan? That's fine. That's fine. We'll move on.
You know
so
what
some
we call
people
that?
are trying.
We call that a red herring.
Great. So some people are playing Clarion Conqueror, apparently, given the screenshot that Stan sent us. All right, let's talk about Flamehold Grappler. It is a 3/3 for Jeskai.
Yes.
Blue, red, white. With first strike, it's a human monk, and it says, when this creature enters, copy the next spell you cast this turn. When you cast it, you may choose new targets for the copy. What is this doing for you out of the sideboard?
It's main deck, and it's not doing anything.
Main deck?
Yeah, no, I actually actively disliked it, and I would side it out aggressively.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that list that Dingo posted, and I was a little skeptical about the grapplers. I think we talked about this, and there's maybe something you can do with like grappler plus the energy unearth that I can't remember the name of, with like looting and pyromancer and stuff. Like maybe there's something there.
Jolt Awake.
Jolted
Is that
Awake.
what it's
Yeah.
called?
Yeah. Nice.
I think you got to go deep with it.
So here's what I'll say. I did manage to like play a grappler and then play a Guide of Souls or something like that. I think there was one game where I played a grappler and then I played my opponent's Manamorphose and got like double Manamorphose.
Okay, that's sick.
Off of Ragavan as well.
Yeah.
It's just too awkward, and it forces you to make really awkward fetching decisions. It makes it a little harder for you to fetch for a surveil land. It puts a lot of pressure on you to hold it until you have 4 mana, so then you can play it with a 1-drop, but your 1-drops are so good that you want to play those aggressively.
Yeah, like the best part about the 3s, both Pyromancer and Inflate, is you can just cast them on curve, but this isn't really a 3, this is a 4, right?
Yeah, at minimum, yeah. It's also bad.
Unless you got a bobble versus bobble or something like that.
Right. I also think it's like kind of actively bad with certain cards, bad with Ragavan, not great with a Johnny, not great with Thraben Charm, not great with Goblin Bombardment. So I quite literally dislike the card and I wouldn't recommend it, but I played it for science because this is the week to do it. I think the other big problem with this card specifically, Devin, you mentioned that those other 3s are good on curve. Those other 3s are also really good top decks or the last card you play in hand. And that's kind of what you want out of your threes in this deck. Like you want something that helps you refill or recharge or go into the mid to long game. And I think Grappler's really at odds with that as well. So card seemed like it could do something interesting, but not in this deck. And I wouldn't play it in Boros. It's certainly not a reason to go blue main. You're playing a blue land to play main or sideboard consigns, but I don't think it's worth it to play this. I would almost rather still play Mockingbird. Almost.
Yeah, like the games in the mirror match, they're always about attrition, right? You're always going to get into these spots where you're top decking, and yeah, like you bring up a great point. Just not being a good top deck is, if you're both Hellbent, you draw this and they draw Seasoned Pyromancer, like you're never winning that game.
Yeah.
All right. Was that your curveball card, or did you have another secret card that you played with?
No, that was the curveball.
Stan had left a curveball on the notes.
Yeah.
Open for
told
interpretation.
David, I said, it doesn't have to be a surprise. I can tell you. Okay. And you said, all right, keep your secrets. Because in fairness, I love a surprise.
Oh, me too. Got to keep it spicy somehow. It's been 6 years on this godforsaken show.
And I've only gotten less politically correct.
Yeah, you've gotten tougher.
How spicy do you want to get? Like, we already started this episode off pretty damn spicy, so.
Shane's going to have a tough time here. All right, so last question I had about your build that I now know have no idea what it actually looked like. What if people are swapping in Voice of Victory? Mm-hmm. What card are people basically taking out of energy to do it? Like what is changing about the deck to be able to fit it?
Well, I'm taking out the Ranger Captains of Eos. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the main one. You might be cutting your Fables or some number of Fables. You might be cutting some number of Static Prisons. Maybe you're going down to just one Thraben. I didn't play any Seasoned Pyromancer, so that's the other one. I think the exact configuration needs to be worked out because I would like to play Seasoned and or Fable because I think those threes are still really important for that longer game. But there's room. There's certainly room because now we don't need Ranger Captain. So that's like minimum 2 slots right there. And if you're playing the previous Jeskai versions, you can cut the Mockingbird as well.
Okay.
2 questions for you before we exit this segment. One, did you get to haste any Voice of Victories?
I didn't have a good reason to because of the context of the games I was in. I had the opportunity a couple of times and I had to think about it, but it was not the line in my estimation.
Happened to me, Devin. I definitely got killed by that one time.
Yeah, I mean, I had a spot in the challenge where I was just like, had a Goddess Souls and I didn't have any energy. And I was like, it was turn 3 because you can't do it on turn 2. But turn 3, it's like, I'm just going to fire it off, make 3 energy, attack, hit you like up the pressure a little bit. And I could certainly see that happening. And then I guess the final question is, are you a believer in 4? Do you think, would you rather be a 3? Because the thing for me is like, they can be a little awkward in multiples, but at the same time, if you have the stuff that it's good with, the second one sometimes is just still good.
I think the second one is twice as good. I did not feel that they were awkward in multiples personally. Sample size is small, one league, but yeah, I would start with 4. If you're gonna go down to 3, maybe, but I like them in multiples because here's the other reason why I like them in multiples. They are a lightning rod. I think the Grand Abolisher text is really scary, so people need to kill them for that sometimes. Making the extra material, if you have Guided Souls or Ocelot Pride, can be really scary. So it's sometimes you're forced with a lot of difficult choices, and I think Voice of Victory is a very sensible thing to kill first because it makes the tempo so annoying. Having multiples of that, I think, gives you a little extra coverage too.
I agree.
Yeah. So it's a sleeve.
Double sleeved.
Sleeve it, baby.
Buy the full art and double sleeve it.
Well, only if you double sleeve your cards, but
hold on. You guys don't double sleeve your cards?
No, I do.
Depends. If I'm lazy, man, I don't know.
Yeah, you play more than I do. So I can understand not doing it just because that's a lot of time.
All of my cards are in perfect fits.
Yeah.
and then they just go and drag in sleeves after that.
That would be
Yeah.
a better idea for me. And then I wouldn't have to like take them out of the perfect fits. I only have like 2 sets of perfect fits, so.
Oh, yeah.
You probably
Anyways.
have some store credit. You can get some more perfect fits.
Yeah. All right, what do you want to talk about next? Next card on the list.
David, did you play any new cards?
I did.
Were they good?
They were cool. Why don't we start with a cool one, and then we'll talk about the one that I think everybody has acknowledged as being good. So I'm going to pop up a deck list for everybody right now.
I hope this is the one that I saw.
This is a little deck list that went for a 5-0 in a league by a player named Screenwriter NY, and it is Storm. It just says WUR as the title, but it is Blue-Red Storm with Stormscale Scion as the only win condition in the deck.
Hell yeah.
So the list that we're looking at here has a couple of cards I wanted to play with. One is Stormscale Scion. The other thing is that it's packing a full set of stock-ups, which is something that I talked about last week being something I have my eye on still from Aether Drift. It's still finding its way into where it needs to live in Modern. The list is basically, other than that, it's Blue-Red Storm. It's not Gift Storm anymore, but it is Blue-Red, rituals, draw cards, Manamorphose, all those kind of things. The enablers you have here are 3 Baral. Remember Baral? 4 Ruby Medallions, so there's no Rals in this. No Ral's Monsoon Mage in here, which is kind of interesting. And then you have 4 Stock Up, 2 Remand in blue, 2 Spell Snare, 4 Preordain. And then you've got your red stuff. You've got Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual, Manamorphose, Strike It Rich, which is kind of like a mini ritual sometimes, or kind of helps you ramp, or also just as a cheap spell trigger. And then the final card that is important here is a 2 of Burst of Speed. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with Burst of Speed?
I just had to look it up, so.
Burst of Speed is a common from M10 that costs a single red. It's a sorcery that says creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. So the idea here is you Stormscale Scion, which is 4 red for a 4/4 flying dragon. It says other dragons you control get +1/+1, and it has Storm. The idea is that you want to storm a bit, make dragons, and then Burst of Speed to give them haste and kill your opponent in a single turn when they do not see it coming. And let me tell you, friends,
They don't see it coming?
they don't see it coming. When it works, it's glorious. There are a lot of interesting things about this deck. I took this to a 2-3 in a league on Moto, so it wasn't like crushing. The decks I lost to were particularly interesting. We can talk about that. I lost against blue-white control with a bunch of Orim's Chants and Scepter, and I lost.
Yeah, that seems
I
tough.
I lost against black-white, and I lost to energy. Were the 3 things that I lost to at this deck, if I remember correctly. So here's the thing. I think what's going on with this deck list that's really interesting is that this is sort of like the deck that lives by value storming instead of trying to play back out of the graveyard a whole lot, storm up to 20 and kill somebody with a grape shot. This deck, you can kill somebody basically on turn 3 by casting 4 spells. So if your turn 2 play is a Ruby Medallion, you can kind of go like Ritual, Manamorphose, Ritual, Stormscale Scion into Burst of Speed, and I think that would have you attack with 5 8/8s in the air, so you would be doing 40 damage to someone with haste on turn 3 if you do that. Now, the thing that's good about that is, like I said, you don't have to draw a bunch of cards. You don't have to necessarily like recycle things out of your graveyard in order to get it to work. You just get to draw cards with Preordain, Manamorphose, Stock Up in particular, and then kind of go on from there. And the reason that Stock Up Baral is in this deck, I think, has to be because it makes Stock Up cheaper. Although Realm Monsoon
would do that too.
Mage does the same thing, so I was a little bit confused why they have Baral over.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah,
Because you have Remand.
Yeah, Remand, the 2 Remand, 2 Spell Snare. So I guess if you get to use one of those counter spells in their cards, then you get to cycle off the Baral. I think is the idea there. I would still be kind of interested. Like, I feel like people haven't really explored like taking the Ruby Storm shell and just swapping the, Ren's Resolve, Reckless Impulse, Glimpse the or whatever that card's called. I think it's Glimpse the Impossible for preordained stock up these kind of blue cantrips. And I wonder if something in that space, should be explored a little bit more of like, maybe you don't play the Scions, but you still use the blue cards in the Storm stuff. But yeah, I saw this list and it looked really sweet.
Yeah. I mean, it works. Like, the funny thing is that I actually played the night before Stan showed me this list when we were planning out this episode. I had drafted a Stormscale Scion in cons, and I played it in Jeskai. I got it very late. Like, I got it like halfway through pack 3. I was already in Jeskai. I was already doing, the Think Twice, and I had a bunch of I had the Blizzard card that lets you draw 3 at instant speed. And I had the Focus the Mind. I had 2 Focus. So I was playing like a Jeskai control deck, basically, in draft. And I killed a bunch of people in going to I had a 5-win deck with it, which is like, okay. But I definitely killed a bunch of people with Stormscale Scion, and there was nothing they could do against it in draft. And obviously there's way more that people can do against it in Modern, but it works. Like, I do think Stormscale Scion is a decently powerful card, especially when you get a discount on how much you cast it for. And there's a little something here. Now, there's a bunch of problems with this deck. Let me tell you some of the problems.
Please.
It's tough. You don't have any interaction for Boros, right? So it's pretty tough to get set up and be able to kill Boros if you're drawing a lot instead of trying to just combo off, which happens sometimes with this deck.
Well,
so I think
I think your plan against Boros is just be the faster combo deck.
That's what I mean. So if you are spending a couple of turns, like if you're turn 2 Ruby Medallion, turn 3 I need to do stock up to be able to get a piece that I was missing, you're kind of in trouble. If you can value Stormscale Scion and get 4 dragons out and have them be blockers, maybe you can hold on for a bit. But it was a bit tough in that one. The thing that was much more difficult actually was against Black-White. Going up against Solitude and Ephemerate was very difficult, because what they'll do is, and actually I said that I played against Black-White. I actually played Green-White. What's the Birthing Pod card?
Birthing Ritual.
Birthing Ritual. Like, it was a Green-White deck that was doing Ephemerate plus Solitude. And what happened there was, we were 1-1. Game 3, I cast Stormscale Scion. They were at like 20 life, and I had enough to do 50 damage to them. And they managed to Ocelot Pride and Guide of Souls their way up to 59 life or something like that.
Oh my
so
God.
I couldn't kill them. So it's like, I cast it. I didn't have the haste card. They went crazy and made so many tokens and got up in the 50s, and then I just had to scoop, because even though I had like 7 dragons out, I couldn't kill them.
Wow, that's wild.
So it was very wild. So Ephemerate was with Solitude was tough, because if they even take out a couple of your dragons, you are in a much less dominating position. And then Blue-White Control, I lost against for a number of reasons, but decks with Wraths, you have to draw the burst of speed then. And especially, in the case of Blue-White Control, they had Teferi as well. So they just Supreme Verdict me during my attack phase, which was, of course, I knew was going to happen given the way that the game was going. But it was still heartbreaking, where I was like, okay, I'm going to die next turn anyway, so I'm going to storm off. I have the burst of speed. I swing in with 6 dragons or whatever, and they just Supreme Verdict me, which, duh. But that's what made it kind of hard. So I do think there's something there as far as this card being a payoff. Maybe the list will be close to this. Maybe it's metagame dependent or something, but it's not a dominating deck. I just thought it was a really sweet deck.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it as like a more of like a one of in the sideboard of the traditional Ruby Storm decks. I think that's where Dingo tried it, but yeah, that's kind of where I see it, where it's just you're using it as an alternate win condition. But I don't know, looks kind of cool.
Yeah, I guess maybe one of the problems with Rawl in this deck is that you have a hard time flipping Rawl.
You still got the rituals.
You still have the rituals, yeah.
But no Past in Flames, so yeah, getting the 6 might actually be kind of tough. Like, if your plan is to storm scale for 4 or 5, and that's your whole turn, I could see that. Like, it is a little bit awkward to try and flip Rawl.
Yeah, but I don't know. It still feels like I would probably rather play that other than over Baral, just because it's an alternate win con and there are no other ones in this deck. So that's probably all we can talk about this deck today. I would say it was fun. If you want to try a different twist on Storm that is a little bit easier and has less number of spells you have to cast in a turn to storm off, I would give it a try and see what you think about it. So now we have to talk about the hype card of the weekend.
The real thing that you wanted to talk about.
The real thing that I wanted to talk about that I didn't really know was, I mean, I knew it was going to be a thing in the sense because you guys both said that this card was good, and that card is Cori-Steel Cutter.
Yeah, I didn't think it was this good.
That it's a generic and a red for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and haste, and then it has flurry. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess. You may attach this equipment to it, and it has equip cost of a generic and a red, and nobody cares because nobody literally ever equips it to anything for the equip cost.
Well, it's not in modern. Maybe in standard, but not in modern.
Yeah, I could see that. So the deck that I played with this was by Baku91, and it won the Modern Showcase qualifier on Saturday and set the internet ablaze, friends, by people going, oh, wow, Cori-Steel Cutter, good card. Apparently, there were 2 more challenge top 8s from lists similar to this over the weekend. I saw reports of people talking about playing this in Energy.
Yeah.
Then I saw a list of people playing Is It Prowess in Standard as well with this card.
There's a lot of it in Standard.
Is there a lot of in Standard? And then also people, like a friend of mine today, Jonathan, texted me and said, what do you think about swapping out Phoenix and Is It Phoenix for Cori-Steel Cutter? And I was like, well, that's just Prowess, which is a deck that used to exist in Pioneer for a minute as well. But I think this is like multi-format all-star feeling like it's happening suddenly.
Oh, yeah.
Which is pretty interesting.
No, this card's busted. What's crazy to me about it is usually on types of effects like this, you would say whenever you cast your second non-creature spell, or like whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the fact that it triggers off of casting Channeler and Monastery Swift Spear is just that card is just so good. And I don't know, turn 1, play a 1-drop, turn 2, Cutter plus Bauble, and then it's really easy to kill your opponent because, I mean, David, as a prowess aficionado, you understand about if your opponent, back in the, couple of years ago when prowess was one of the best decks in the format, if your opponent just had 2 removal spells for your 2 creatures, it was really hard to win.
Yeah.
Now, if you have the Cutter, basically every turn, you're just making another body, and they can't keep up with that with their removal spells,
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I love having blue-red prowess potentially be a thing again. It's really the thing that we've talked about with prowess so many times over the years, since it was good, and even in the earlier versions of prowess when it was kind of morphing from mono red Phoenix into a different thing on top of that, was that the 2 drops in these decks never work out, right? They're never good enough. We're always looking at these other cards. The one that came the closest is Stormwing Entity, of course, and that's essentially, in a sense, what Cori-Steel Cutter is. It's just when they killed your Stormwing Entity, yes, you got to scry. Yeah, it was hard to kill it because it didn't die to Fatal Push or whatever. You were still dead. Even though it was a good 2-drop, it couldn't recover. And Cori-Steel Cutter, you can actually recover with this deck in a way that you sort of weren't able to until this card, as far as I can remember.
Yeah, and that the Storming Entity is a good comparison because Storming Entity was a card that you had to sequence your spells in a very specific order, like you had to go spell and then entity. This being a card that you can just slot it on the curve whenever you need to. If you have, turn 2, you can play it. If you want to hold it till turn 3, if you don't have a bauble, that's also fine. But you don't have to you don't have that tension of I need to save a spell for my entity turn and wait till turn 3. It's right. It's basically all the good stuff about entity without any of the downside.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, there's other interesting things in this list. Baku was playing Bedlam Reveler as a 2-of, which I loved seeing come back out of the graveyard. I got to tell you, didn't really do anything for me still, even in this day and age of Modern. We'll see. It has a 2-of Storm Chaser's talent, which was just kind of extra prowess guys. I'm not a huge fan of this card either after the league that I played with it because I never did anything or had enough mana to do anything in this deck other than just cast it as a 1/1.
I've got a pitch for something to replace Bedlam.
Okay.
Remember Slick Shot Show Off?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
You plot that, you cast this, then you play the Slick Shot for free.
Yeah, where's Slick Shot? It's a great question.
I think it got replaced by Cutter. Is kind of the idea where you don't want to have that many 2s in your deck because you also have Expressive too. So like once you have Cutter, Expressive, and Manamorphose and Slick Shot, it's like kind of a lot of 2s. I was thinking about maybe just playing Soulscar Mage. Like, why don't we go back to that card?
I hate Soulscar Mage.
I mean, everybody does, but
yeah, I would try either. I would try either or both of those cards. I'll say I love trying Bedlam Reveler to get like your engine going again, to draw a bunch of cards. You know, I want to draw cards. It just I never had the time or the inclination to like make it happen with this, unfortunately. So I mean, really, the MVPs of this deck are for me. It was like Preordain was like, oh wow, huge. Expressive Iteration often helped me dig my way out of turns where I didn't have any gas, and I was suddenly like, okay, I need to I need to play this and then draw something so I can get a token off of Cutter, or I'm on 4 mana and I need to play this, get a land and a Cutter so that I can like, you know, cast the Cutter and blah, 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 blah. That's a little awkward because you don't get the token when you sequence it that way, but and that's something I would say. Cori-Steel Cutter does not know that it's a second spell if you cast it, right? So you have to cast it first, then you have to cast something else second. If you cast a spell, cast Cutter, then cast another spell, keep in mind that also doesn't work.
Yeah, that would be a third.
Only your second spell of the turn. Yeah. So it like you said, casting Storming Entity, you do have to do some weird sequencing to make this, to maximize this and really plan your turns out in advance. But, you know, I took this one to a 3-2, which was pretty good. The interesting thing is, I'm pretty sure that I lost to energy twice in this league. Keep that in mind.
They gain a lot of life sometimes, and they create a lot of blockers.
A lot of kill spells too. So I could see that being a tough matchup.
So I kind of felt like it was a tough matchup. The thing that was the cool matchup that you can imagine it would be pretty good against is
Eldrazi.
Yes. So I beat Eldrazi twice during that league as well, especially post-board. You feel
when you bring in consigns
very, very ahead.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that matchup too is like their Kozilek's returns don't even do that much. You have 3/3 channelers, and then all of your other creatures are prowess creatures. So if you just hold up a spell, right? Swiss Sparrow's 2 toughness, the Cori-Steel Cutter token's a 2/2. So if you play one spell on their turn or whenever they go to cast their K return, like you just counter it.
Yeah.
So.
Pretty much. You do have to be smart enough to do that, which I definitely got blown out by Kozilek's in a couple of the games, but I managed to recover and come back. Yeah. Or you really just have to have the time to do it too. Like sometimes you're just like, well, I have to do something this turn right now because they just played what's the Sire 7 Faces or whatever.
Oh, the 7 deaths? Oh no.
Yeah, I faced that in both matches that I played, and I managed to win those matches. In one game, I just YOLO'd 2 like I killed it with a Lava Dart and an Unholy Heat with Delirium.
Take 14.
Took the 14 damage and killed them.
Nice. That's good.
Which is crazy. So I think this deck is really fun. I will definitely be playing this in Modern for a bit. You know, I was talking earlier about like, well, what deck do I play in RCQ season? If I can, I will definitely play this deck. That's just who I am.
You're home.
Yeah, I'm home. I did feel like being home again for sure. Yeah. Oh, Devin, you got it sleeved up right there.
Where's the Cutter? Hold on.
They're
there somewhere.
Not yet.
Anyways, keep talking.
Keep talking. I mean, I don't know how much more I have to say about it. I think it's a legit card. I'm not sure that makes Blue-Red Prowess a legit deck for sure. But I do think this card is really good and will have a home somewhere permanently in this format in addition to others, I think.
I believe in this deck. If I have an RCQ this weekend, I think I'm going to play it.
Right on.
Bold. Dev, is there anything else you've played? Any cards we haven't mentioned?
Well, there was a deck that you had asked. I mean, I've been playing a whole bunch of Standard over the past week and a half, and basically tried everything under the sun. But the one deck that I just recently tried earlier today that I wanted to highlight was this Mardu version of Pixie. So, you know, kind of if you're into the Pixie sort of thing, but maybe you're not feeling the Esper sort of life, this deck is kind of has the same sort of black white Pixie shell. So for people who aren't kind of familiar with that shell in Standard, that shell being Nurturing Pixie, which is a thing that allows you to pick up permanents, combined with Sun Pearl Kirin. So you have some, 2 different ways to pick up permanents. And then you're picking up Hopeless Nightmare, which is they discard, lose 2 life. Nowhere to Run, Momentum Breaker, which are kill spells. So that's kind of the whole, core central package of the deck. Now, typically, Pixie decks that are very popular in Standard, they play blue for This Town Ain't Big Enough, and Storm Chaser's Talent, and sometimes a couple Kaidos. This version, instead of playing the blue cards, has swapped those out for red cards, and the red cards, including Fear of Missing Out, Torch the Tower for an additional kill spell, and then the aforementioned Cori-Steel Cutter. And I was initially a little skeptical because of how powerful the blue cards are. Like, This Town Ain't Big Enough gets you out of some really tight jams. Storm Chaser's Talent, really good going long. But the thing that I realized is how good Cori-Steel Cutter works with both Nurturing Pixie and Sun Pearl Kirin, because those cards, they're, essentially, it's one card, but you're picking up another permanent. So if you cast the Cutter on 2, say you go turn 1 Nightmare or whatever, play Cutter on turn 2, and then turn 3, even if you don't have that many spells left over, you can go Pixie, bounce the Nightmare, replay the Nightmare, and that's your second spell for Cutter. So these cards allowing you to double spell more frequently gives you a lot of power with the Cutter. And then the aggressive nature of the haste and prowess of it, very good with the chip damage from Hopeless Nightmare, Optimistic Scavenger. Whenever you play an enchantment, you make your creatures bigger. So I feel like I'm not going to say that this is necessarily a better version of Pixie, because Esper is so well established, and it's really hard to from the limited sample size that I have, to say definitively say that it's better. But I do think that it is a much more aggressive approach. And as the Standard format gets more aggressive and more people start there's been a ton of prowess, a ton of mono red, I think that kind of slanting your Pixie deck more aggressively does make sense in a format like that. So Cutter, I was really impressed by Cutter in this deck.
That's awesome. I'm assuming you're mostly just playing Standard on Arena.
Yeah.
Where Standard play numbers are huge no matter what. It's not season dependent.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
That was good though. I think I ended up going 7-1 with it on the ladder, but yeah, it was really impressive. Like I said, I do like the fact that red also gives you access to a Braid in the sideboard, because I played against a lot of Cutters today. There was a lot of blue-red prowess. Yeah. So I think that if you are playing Standard in the near future, would highly recommend an uptick in artifact removal, like Cori-Steel or like a Braid, Lauren the Third Path, Terra Sunder, Tranquil Furlback. If you have room to play more of those cards in your sideboard, or perhaps even main deck, you should really consider doing that, because there is a ton of prowess going around in Standard.
Yeah, because Monastery Swiftspear is also Standard legal.
Yes, right? It is.
Hell yeah. Nature is healing. Are you seeing, just anecdotally, in the ladder on Arena, a lot of Tarkir cards?
Not necessarily. I mean, there definitely is some Tarkir cards that sort of go into pre-existing archetypes. The Is It Prowess deck was a deck before Tarkir, certainly got a huge upgrade with Cori-Steel Cutter. The Esper Pixie decks are playing Sun Pearl Kirin. I've even seen Mono Red playing Tersa Lightshatter. So there's definitely this feeling that there's some upgrades to the quote unquote big 3 from Tarkir into the set. But as far as the Tarkir archetypes, like Abzan or any of the clans or dragons or any of that stuff, not really seeing a lot of that. But there's definitely a lot of stuff in the set that gives you some good upgrades to existing archetypes, and it's at least changing the dynamic a little bit, even though Red Pixie are still at the top of the heap.
Yeah, sick. Tersa looks cool. I noticed Tersa Lightshatter appear in I think A or maybe some Boros energy decks as well. Just because it's... Well, we're reading the cards, right? 2 in a red for a 3/3 haste. When it enters, discard up to 2 cards, draw that many cards, and when it attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may exile a card at random from your graveyard and play that card this turn. So I can sort of understand why people might want to try to play it in the Spyro or Fable slot, but
yeah. So before we go, one card.
Oh yes.
So none of us have encountered Ugin Eye of the Storms in the wild yet.
I finally have.
Okay.
Since you asked that question, I played against an Eldrazi deck and they Ugin me, and this was game 1 of the match, and I scooped the match.
Now, you scooped the match?
Well, this is also when lag got untenable, so it's everything was taking forever. My opponent was playing Eldrazi, which is tough no matter what, and they Ugin me. I saw what it can do, and I was like, this is... No part of this experience is enjoyable, so I'm going to write an angry letter that I'm going to read on my podcast.
Wow.
What was worse, the Ugin or the lag?
Why not both?
Okay.
Here's what I will say, though. It looked impressive, and I think one or several of us are going to try it for next week's show.
Yeah. I
Sleep Believe Heave isn't over just yet, dog.
Yeah. We'll see what else evolves. There might be some other things.
I got one I got one copy of that guy from my LGS. I would have bought more, but they only had one.
Of Ugin?
Yeah.
I opened a foil one today. A random pack that I opened.
Yeah, I've got this booster box that I want to draft with my friends, but getting 6 people in a room at once when you're 30 to 40 something adults can be hard.
Or even, when you invite your 40 to 50-year-old friend along for the ride, it's still hard.
Yeah. Well, I think once you're in your 50s, scheduling with that person gets easier. They're
close to death. Is that what it is?
They're approaching empty nester status. What are they doing all day?
I'm sure that's what I'm doing right now is approaching empty nester status.
Every year your children get older, 1 year closer to moving out finally. Or running away to like a cool kids hideout like in Hook or Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
1990.
Exactly. Some skate ramps.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Indoor skate park. Menthol or regular?
Yeah.
That's Sam Rockwell's famous line. Cool. Good app. By the way, we haven't received any emails with Deathrite Shaman lists, but someone in the Discord pointed out that you can just take a stock Orzhov midrange deck and replace all of the Relic of Progenitus with Deathrite Shaman, and that's all you really need to test right there.
Okay.
Since I forgot that Deathrite it's all hybrid mana.
Mm-hmm.
So, Devin, maybe we can do that for science. Although I guess you don't have a way of producing green to exile a creature.
You'll have to put a green in to do that.
We could probably figure out a way. I think we can do it.
Or just ignore that line of text. That's what I say. Pretend it doesn't exist. It's probably still too good.
I think if we're going to play Deathrite Shaman, side note, we should make an agreement at the beginning of the match where the person playing Deathrite can only use one of the 3 abilities just to make it fair.
And still prove that it's too strong?
Yeah, it's still probably too strong. But I digress.
All right, good up, y'all. Shall we wrap it?
Yeah, I was like, are you going to read the thing or go for it?
Okay, yeah, I'll read the thing.
Okay.
That wraps up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. If you use Apple or Spotify, leave us a rating and review. Hey, what's that in your pocket? It's just my other sister podcast that I make with our old friend Shane. We're recording episode 6 tomorrow, which probably means there's going to be a new episode of What's That in Your Pocket dropping this week. If you're hearing this dive down and you haven't subscribed to What's That in Your Pocket, you got to do it. I should probably put a link to WTIYP in our show notes, but it's hard to do because everyone uses different apps.
Yeah.
We don't have a website yet. Dave, can you make a page on thedivedown.com for me? I'll send you a brief.
Okay. Yes, please do.
If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Blue Sky, The Dive Down on Blue Sky. Email thedivedown@gmail.com. You can support us patreon.com/thedivedown. You can check out our store at thedivedown.com/store. You can support Doomwake on Twitch, twitch.tv/Doomwake. Now, Devin, is that DOOM?
00.
Whoa, dude.
Whoa. Didn't see that coming, did you?
Head over to heavyplay.com to get some incredible deck and dice boxes and playmats featuring the Equip Mag system. Use promo code TheDiveDown2025 for 10% off your first order at heavyplay.com. And shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring the Dive Down. If you sign up for Mana Traders using promo code TheDiveDown, all one word, it'll get you 25% cash back after 3 months of a rental service. There's all these new Dragonstorms of Tarkir. Dragons of Tarkir Storms. Save 8% on some singles from our friends at Nerd Rage with promo code DIVE8. That is an evergreen promo code. We don't always read it, but it's always there for you to use. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and play Ugin to prepare for the next episode of The Dive Down.